Lovely. We'll bring you over. No mai haere mai ki tēnei hui o te konihira o Whakatū. Tina koutou katoa. Kia ora, welcome. Welcome to this meeting of Nelson City Council on the 15th of... Oh no, that's not us, is it? Yes it is. 15th of November already. My goodness, that is really the year going by, isn't it? Welcome. Welcome to you all. Welcome to councillors. We have a few apologies today. I'll cover off in a moment. Welcome to Nathaniel. Nathaniel is joining our meeting. He's not shown on your agenda, but Nathaniel, I think, must have finished exams. Have you, Nathaniel? Okay, so Nathaniel's finished his exams, and as a dedicated youth councillor, rather than sleeping in, he is here at the council meeting. And so I think we should honour Nathaniel by including him in the meeting today. Is everybody happy with that? It means that Nathaniel can fully participate in the meeting. So welcome.
And Mayor, can we give him voting rights? If you'd like him to fully participate.
If it was up to me, Councillor Laurie, and I had the magic wand that allowed me to change statute as a mayor, then yes I would. But at this point in time, I don't have the magic wand just to change statute. But you never know, one day in the future I might. See how we go. So welcome to the meeting. We'll just start this morning with the opening prayer. Ask that you all stand for the opening prayer.
Almighty God, sovereign in all things, bless the city and its people. Guide us in local government each day, that our decisions may be wise and just, and magnify your holy name. Amen.
Amen. So dealing with the mechanics of today, we have apologies from Councillor Ackland, Councillor Delberg and Councillor Rutledge. And I have just noted that Councillor Barker's let me know that he may have to leave the meeting today due to an urgent family matter. So we'll just acknowledge the apologies and note that Councillor Barker may have to leave at some point. So I'll move that we accept the apologies. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Walker. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Now, in terms of the order of business, remember, of course, that we're live streaming our meeting, and just use your microphones in the appropriate manner. The recommendations will be displayed on the screens, and it'll be the usual system of one of them, and it'll be obvious to you, hopefully, will be the recommendation as set out on the agenda, and then if we make any amendments, they'll be shown on the other screen so that you can see the transition. We have two late items today. There was one recommendation from the Works and Infrastructure Committee that didn't get captured in the system for the recommendations through to Council, and so we'll come to that at the appropriate time. And we have a public excluded item, which is a late item, a request for leave of absence that in the system didn't follow its way through into the agenda, so we'll deal with that a bit later on. So we've got the recommendations that we consider. Actually, we might as well do those now. We'll just pass the appropriate resolution just to deal with those matters today, that the Council considers the item regarding Works and Infrastructure Committee recommendations to Council at this meeting as an item not on the agenda pursuant to Section 46A 7A of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987 to enable a timely decision to be made. I shall so move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Walker. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. And the recommendation to consider the public excluded item regarding requests for leave of absence at this meeting as a major item not on the agenda pursuant to Section 46A 7A of the Local Government Official Information Meetings Act 1987 to enable a timely decision to be made. So moved by Councillor Courtney, seconded by myself. I will put that motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Now on our agenda, just in terms of interest, a usual reminder that if you find that you have a conflict in relation or think you may have a conflict in relation to an item on the agenda, I encourage you to signal that and take the opportunity to seek advice from the Chief Executive if you feel you need to do so. I'm happy to take a pause in the meeting to do that, and of course a reminder to continue to be vigilant about keeping your interest register up to date. We have public forum this morning, and we have public forum as noted in your agenda. We have Leonie Allen, Jill Starling from Parker Gallery, Mike Darling from Hunting and Fishing, and Alan Knott from United Video, who wish to speak on behalf of the Wakatu Square retailers. Jill and Alan, I think, are going to speak, but if the others wish to speak as well, they're most welcome. Now, we're going to just have a little discussion about procedure in relation to this one. So this request for public forum has come forward. I've had a look at it, and I have a procedural concern around the process steps here that I want to try and cover off as safely as I can. So there is a matter coming to hearings panel other to address a closure application. So there's been a closure application from Bay Dreams that's been gone through the normal advertising process. There is a hearing coming up for that. 3 councillors are appointed as the hearings panel, and in the normal process of things, it's running through its own hearing process, and the members of that panel should deal with that matter in the form of the hearing. So the matters that they hear should be fully contained within that process, in my view, and not influenced by presentations outside of that process. And I think that's quite important, given the due process of an application in response to the applicant, that there couldn't be a perception that they'd been influenced by presentations outside of that process. So the 3 councillors, and I'm being very belts and braces about this, Councillor McGurk, I can see your puzzled look, but I'm just wondering whether it's probably appropriate for us to step out. I think it probably is appropriate that you step out, so that's what I was just going to address. So I've checked with Robin, the 3 councillors are Councillor Delberg and Councillor Rutledge, who helpfully, apologies today, and Councillor McGurk. And I think just to have a very clear process around that, so that the applicant can be, and we can all be confident that will be the appropriate thing to do. There is a broader issue that I know that the retailers wish to present on, which is the general principle of how the square operates around events. But just given we've got this live process at the moment, Councillor McGurk, are you comfortable with that step? I just think it would be I think it would be safe too. Thank you. All right. So we'll just get organised for public forum, and any questions on what I've covered off so far. Councillor Laurie.
Hey, Madam Mayor, and I didn't see you the other day, so welcome back.
Thank you.
So my question is, that makes sense on one level, but on another level, I think we'd have to get the members of that hearing panel to swear that they will not watch the public forum on the YouTube stream. Because if I was someone who had the concerns that you have, I would be thinking that makes sense, but it's entirely possible that the members of the hearing panel will watch the video and then therefore be affected. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that the advice is being given around running due process, and that advice will be given to all members of the hearings panel. I've got absolute confidence that Councillor McGurk understands his duty, and I'm sure that as we communicate through to Councillor Rutledge and Councillor Delberg to make sure that they're kept up to date, they will have absolute capability of managing their responsibilities too, just as you would, Councillor Laurie. Now, public forum. So we'll start public forum, and I'll invite, thank you, Councillor McGurk. We'll make sure someone comes to get you when we're all done, and I'll invite the representatives to join the meeting. Welcome, Jill and Alan. Now, to use the microphone, there's a button on there, an on-off, and when you press it and the red light's going, you're all set to go, so welcome.
Okay, well, thank you for letting us come and talk to you today. I'm Jill Starling. I'm owner of the Framing Rooms and the Quiet Dog Gallery. I've been in business in Richmond and in Nelson for 10 years, and I've been in Wakatu Square for the last 6 months. So this will be our first summer in the square. I don't really need to tell anyone how tough retail is. Really tough in Nelson. Our winters are really hard. We really rely on summer for the trade. Closing off Wakatu Square is disastrous for us. For our trade, it is the last thing that we need. So we really hope that the council will carefully consider the rights and the needs of retailers in the square. We're concerned when external businesses possibly can take precedence over our needs, and that their profits maybe are seen as more important than our revenue. People who come to the framing room certainly need to be able to park. They're carrying big things. If they can't come in and park, they won't come in and use our business. And I think that's the same for a lot of the retailers in the square. I don't see Wakatu Square as being a bus depot. I see it as being a retail area. And I think the parking is really very important. So I'm just here to say that I hope you're the council that supports local businesses and that advocates for local businesses, and not the council that takes the decision to support external businesses, which is at our detriment.
Thank you. Hi guys, I'm Alan Knott. I'm in your immediate neighbour down there at United Video. And a bit like Jill, I've been in business for 25 years in United Video, and when we started, there were probably 400 stores, video stores throughout New Zealand. We're down to 30, and that number's dropping because it's a damn hard market for us. We've got everybody having a go at us. We've got Netflix, we've got Sky, we've got downloading, we've got streaming, we've got all sorts of stuff. And now I find that the council are having a go at me too. Friday and Saturday, the days that I make the money, we're paying the bills Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Come Friday, Saturday, that's when we need the revenue. And it was seriously affected on the last episode with the rugby. I went to the rugby, I loved it. I loved the whole concept of it, don't get me wrong. But when we take a big hit like we did, there is alternative parking in Trafalgar Street. Well, that doesn't work, does not work. A bit like the galleries and picture framing, we need people to be able to park close. We've got a lot of old folks that have got no other means of transport or can't walk. They were on their walkers, their frames and all that sort of stuff. We just can't afford to have another closure and another day like we did the other day. I just can't accept it. And as I say, 25 years, I've never had to talk to you guys before about an issue that I think that there is no right and there's no benefit for us at all. I see the big picture. Sure, a lot of people coming into town, but they're not going to be spending money at our shops. None of us will be any better off. We're going to be seriously affected, and I just hope to heck that you guys take note of that and come up with something else. I did see something in the was readdressed that possibly keep the car park closed only from 5 o'clock on. Well, hey, that is really my busy time. I close at 9, and between 5 and 9, that's when we are super flat out, so it ain't going to work for me. So please, yeah, reconsider and find something else.
Thank you both. Now, councillors, I'm just going to give you a little bit of context for this. So this public forum has been put forward. Now, had I been here, I have to say I would have had quite a discussion about suggesting to you that this is not the right venue. And the reason why I'm going to just be somewhat cautious about this is that that Jill and Ellen are entitled to come and speak at the hearing, where their issues and concerns will be considered by the hearing panel. So at the moment we have a timetabled hearing for this application. It has been notified. The application was notified with the times as requested by the applicant. The staff gave some feedback to the applicant to suggest to them that they reduced the time they were asking for, but they decided that they didn't wish to do that. The staff cannot direct them to change it. They can only have the conversation, and therefore they must advertise as per the application. The staff have assessed the application. They have written a report. They have a recommendation in that report to restrict the hours. But as it is for every decision-making process at council, it is a recommendation from the staff. The panel are yet to hear anybody that wishes to speak, and I strongly encourage you to go to that hearing so that you can be heard, because that's the decision-making forum, not here. It's a different piece of legislation that they're operating under, even a different act to what I'm operating under today. And so you need to go and be heard at that hearing, and it is after the applicant, if they wish to be heard, and any submitters wish to be heard, that the hearings panel will make their decision. Okay, so they've got a recommendation from the officers, but that is at this stage a recommendation only, and then they must hear from all the parties and consider and deliberate and decide. So today we can have some discussion. If you want questions of clarification, I recommend to you, councillors, that you restrict that quite seriously, because you can't superimpose yourself as the hearing panel, right? That's not your job today. You're not dealing with a hearing around a closure. That is a different piece of legislation for a different day.
But this is a bigger issue.
Yes, Jill, I understand. So in relation to the bigger issue around public spaces and events, I'm happy to question them. I don't want to get to the detail of the application. First, I have Councillor Courtney, followed by Councillor Skinner, followed by Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for that clarification. That was necessary, I think, so that we don't get off track here this morning. Jill and Alan, thank you very much for presenting, having the courage actually to come and present. Alan, you haven't been here for 25 years, the whole time you've been in business. We get the message loud and clear. I think everyone around this table gets the message loud and clear, which is good. I'm slightly embarrassed for you that you have to be here this morning to make a case on this point, but it's democracy at work and we all accept that. I want to know what prompted you to be here, what communication did you have, and what options did you have to consider? I need to be clear in my mind about that.
Okay, well, we got a letter saying that there was the proposal to close Wakatu Square car park, Wakatu Lane and Achilles Ave. And we were asked on that letter if we would like to provide feedback. I thought feedback's quite an interesting word, because we obviously really oppose this. So we didn't know about it, although I understand it was on the website. I don't actually look at the website to see what might be happening. So that was the first time I heard of it. And I just like to say it does take up a lot of time to oppose things. And my concern is this going to be an option that the council suggests every time there's a big event? Because this is very time consuming to have to come and do this.
Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I greatly appreciate you coming to this council hearing, to council meeting, to let us know the concerns there. I saw them in the paper, sports shop affected as well, and concerned. Any other businesses have shown a disgruntled or concern?
Yeah, nearly every retail business on Wakatu Square wrote and opposed this.
Anyone supporting it?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And one last question for the Chair, and probably myself, with your framing business, where you've decided to have your business, that was very much a part of it being a car park there, was it?
It was completely about it being a car park, yes, because people need parking. And I would say there's a new development that I think is going in, and again, you know, they will want it to be a really positive place for retail. This is not positive.
And I love your video shop. I reckon you'll be last man standing for a long time.
Well, it's interesting also because this is where we started off from on this.
Oh, true, very true.
And, yeah, we've done the full circle, and that's the reason I came back too, because the double thing is people know where I was, and we're backing onto the car park with ample car parking.
No, it's great. It's not many cities have a video store.
No, so keep using us, guys.
Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's great you guys are here because it's happened once, it's going to happen twice, or it looks like it's going to happen twice. There's a pattern forming here, and I think it's great you've come in to talk about the wider issue of us using the car park for these events. So my first question is, through the Chair, does it occur to any of you guys that we might be able to do the same thing with the buses in Rutherford Park next to the Trafalgar Centre, or perhaps Miller's Acre?
Currently Miller's Acre... Oh, there we go. Hello. Miller's Acre is not a suitable option. I spoke to the guy at the bus depot. The design of the entrance to Miller's Acre is too low. The low profile of the buses, they will not be able to enter into there. They can only get in there with their big coaches. If that's not a design fault, I don't know what is. But, so yeah, unfortunately Miller's Acre wasn't an issue, an option for them. And I don't know about the other one.
Through the Chair, the Trafalgar Centre area? No? Okay. And my other question is, have you guys, through the Chair, Have you talked a little bit, I know it's, your business information and everything, but have you tried to come up with a figure for how much your businesses combined will lose? Because that might be quite persuasive.
I would say it would be tens of thousands. If you're including shops like hunting and fishing and Kathmandu, that's a massive time of year at the moment in summer for their trade. It is huge. And certainly, if the council want us to come up with a figure, we can do that.
Is that, Matt, because we're going to get recompensed?
I don't
So,
think so.
councillors and public forum members, I'm actually going to interrupt now because this is exactly the level of detail, Councillor Laurie, that needs to be at the hearing. Okay, so you need to take that to the hearing. You can't superimpose a quasi-hearing today. So I'm going to move on to Councillor Noonan very quickly, and then we're going to finish off because we're down to discussing a detail of a hearings matter. So if we can keep it at the big picture, Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just going to make a comment to, sorry, I'm being interrupted. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the comment from me rather than a question to the presenters, thank you for coming in, by the way. The challenge that we have here is that we haven't got the paper, it's going to another committee, and we haven't got the detail anyway. We all know parts of the story, but not the whole story. I'd like to think that we can assist the retailers in some way, but without having the paper, it's very difficult to suggest anything. I just think that's a bit of a challenge. I'm going to ask the presenters this morning, are you going to the hearing?
Yeah, we probably will be going to the hearing. The reason why we are here, which I think is just, the main point, is that, Wakatu Square was obviously proposed at some stage, again. And the first time was with the All Blacks. I think, I was a bit blindsided by that, but we accepted that. And now it's come about again. So the main issue is that somewhere along the line, somebody is suggesting that Wakatu Square is the option for a bus depot. Now, this is just going to continue with other big events. This is why this issue is actually up here. It's not about the specificities of Bay Dreams. That's one example. This will be continuous. That's our worry.
Okay, thank you.
Fallback.
So if you are going to the hearings panel, they have a decision power that we don't have today. So thank you. I'm glad you are.
Thank you very much for coming in. I think you've got to run through that hearing process, and again, I'm just going to strongly encourage you that you do attend, and you're able to therefore speak to, and you're able to get the hearings panel to ask questions. So that's an important part of the decision-making process. So I really encourage you to attend. I know that it is a time commitment for busy people, but that is the statutory process that we need to run through because we have the application.
And I think we probably will be going to the hearing.
All right, in terms of the broader picture, so thank you very much for attending, and I will close off public forum now and say to council, the broader issue is one that I think we need to have some thinking about in terms of how we use public spaces around events where they have multiple uses for car parking that supports retail, and we need to do some good thinking with our city development team about locations for public transport. Public transport is going to become more and more important for our city. We have made a strong commitment through the Regional Land Transport Plan to public transport, and it will be increasing. So the Regional Transport Committee has got money, significant funding for a bus depot in its plan. It is wanting to progress that and wanting to add further services to the public transport network. So we need to be mindful of the presentation that's been made today in terms of the potential benefits and conflicts around the bus depot and buses that are being supporting for events and the implications around that for the CBD. So we look at it in that big picture. Thank you very much for coming in. Moving on with the agenda, confirmation of minutes. We'll just wait for Councillor McGurk to pop back. He's on his way. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Councillor McGurk. Gosh, the legislation that we operate really is quite difficult sometimes to translate into normal public speak, isn't it? It's a really confusing process for people. You know, we're sitting here today under the LGA 2002, the road stopping, those issues, temporary road closures that are under the 1974 Act, and even trying to translate all those things around what we do is a bit interesting. Well, yeah, it's also one of those things where it's just like resource consent processes. People are entitled to, you know, as long as they comply with the Act, they're entitled to make their application and have it considered through due process. So I think the officers done a good job. They went out yesterday to meet with as many businesses as they could to explain the process. And I think just a feedback perhaps to our comms team is I saw a query, Mr. Shattuck came through on the, Mr. Shattuck, I saw a query had come through in relation to this matter from media, and I think it would be useful just to, I know it's after the event, but just because they've run the story, but just to follow up to explain to them how that legislation works in relation to the application and what is about to follow so that they can understand the procedural measures. All right, confirmation of minutes. We've closed off public forum, confirmation of minutes, pages 11 through 22, 20 September. Any corrections that need to be made to these minutes?
Madam Mayor,
Councillor Noonan.
in my copy on pages 13 to 15 there was a complete double up of the commentary. I don't know if it is in the digital version. 6.2.2 is then doubled up again on the next page, exactly the same.
It's not exactly that.
Well, I think it needs some looking at. The other...
Robin,
we can just go through, double check that.
Which bit, well, let's just have a look at it now. Which bits, Councillor Noonan, are you concerned about? Is there commentary? If you could just give us the start of a paragraph.
So if you start on page 13 at 6.2.2, commentary starts, Your Worship, they were advised that the Works and Infrastructure Committee meeting there had been extensive discussion.
Yeah.
If you go to the bottom of page 14, it's exactly the same.
All right, so we need to, right, Robin's got that. She's going to remove, that's all good, thank you very much.
And there is one other one, page 23, the third paragraph. Doesn't make sense. Second sentence, NZTA had agreed they with live streaming meetings, but not workshops. So I think there might be a word missing, but I don't know which word it might be.
Would, not with, perhaps.
They would, yeah.
So with that correction. Thank you.
Well, I think it's agreed to live streaming of meetings, but not workshops. So that's would be what it is the right, and it needs some clarification. Gosh, I wonder who reviewed these agendas before they went to print. As I was away, and obviously the double check system had a few errors in it this time, Robin, didn't it? There you go. Thank you, Councillor Noonan. Oh yes, you're getting your eyes fixed. That's good. That's very good. All right. So with those corrections, one more, Councillor Barker, and then Councillor McGurk.
The two versions are not exactly the same. So
oh goodness.
No, which is the correct version?
Oh, okay. Oh yes, you're correct. There's different wording in there. Yes, let's leave these ones.
Bring them back.
Why don't we bring them back? Because I think we need to have them right. They're important public records. So, Councillor McGurk, anything further? While we're
on page 17 of the agenda, 6.5. I want to know what Councillor Matheson does because he can teleport himself back in time. He left the meeting at 10:44 and comes back at 10:09.
Right, okay, that needs sorting out as well. That needs sorting out. Righty-ho. What we're going to do is these minutes are going to reappear another day when they're ready to go, aren't they, Robin? All good, so we won't be moving those today. Let's have a crack at the 11th of October one, see how we go on those. On page 32, 31. So these are the 11th of October. Any corrections or additions to these minutes? Thank you, Councillor McGurk. I'm happy to second those. All those in favour? Aye. Against carried. Now we have ones from the 25th of October. I was not at this meeting, so somebody else should move these. Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Thank you, Councillor Barker. No corrections or additions. I'll put the motion that we confirm the minutes as a true and correct record. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carries. All right, now we're going to move on to recommendations from committees. And we're going to start with the Audit, Risk and Finance Subcommittee on pages, which we've got just sitting there as a suite of recommendations. We're going to start with the carry forwards. And I think given the, and I apologise, I haven't flagged this to the officers, and I don't know if this is Chief Financial Officer, which particular officer would want to be around just to speak to these briefly. I think it's important that we do, just for all of council, so I understand what's here, or the Chief Executive, just to run through what's sitting in here. So in terms of the suite of what they mean. So just translate it into plain English rather than financial speak. I know, those of us who are at the meeting understand what it is, but I think it's important that you all do. Hey, do you want to have a go at that? Or Alec? Or Alec, who would like to have a go at that?
Okay.
Okay. Hey.
What page are you looking at?
I'm just looking, we're at the start. So we're just the Audit, Risk and Finance, and we've got the carry forwards for 2017-18. And that is something I want all councillors just to be across, because it influences as we go through our annual plan processes. Everyone needs to just make sure they're really across the financials, which is why they're at council.
So,
thank you, Pat.
I think compared to the total budget of, so as you can tell, this is completely unscripted. So I think the revised capital budget that the council effectively signed off on in January was in the order of $40 million. We spent roughly 32. And then it was a case of what we were going to carry forward. So we eventually only carried forward just under 5 million of that, which was the 4.945 million. Some projects were running ahead of time, and that's what the 1.145 million is. So that was money that they were running ahead. So that was money that was spent last year that was to be funded from this year. So there was an offset.
Does that make sense for everybody? So that's what your offsetting is, okay? Thank you, Pat.
The operating budgets, there was some projects, because we're not building something, but they are still quite specifically a project. They're not capital, they are operating budgets. Some of them were running behind time, and if we wanted those projects to be completed, we needed to bring some of the operating funding forward. So that's what the $700,000 is about. The other, approving the release, the fact is that carrying forward some $5 million worth of funding, less 1.145, meant that we had effectively added roughly $4 million to this year's capital budget, and we didn't consider we'd be able to deliver in the order of $44 million. So we also identified funding that we would not be using this year, and that's the $4 million. So that there were some projects that we went through and effectively said will not be on the capital projects list for this year. So that's what the the fourth approve is about. And the $945,000, from my recollection, that was projects that we had completed that had come in under budget.
So that's your saving, nearly $1 million. And then the final one over the page is the wrap-up, so that's a consolidated, yeah. Sorry, Pat, keep on going.
Yes, and that's the summary of where the capital budget for this financial year is now $41,868,000.
Right, and so that's and it's not including the consolidation of invested assets. So it's a clean figure of saying that basically tells you that's the work. Essentially, that's
yes.
what I described it, that's the work. So
that's what we're aiming to deliver this financial year.
And that's a big bundle of work. So thanks, Pat. I just wanted to run through that, and the reason I'm doing that is because you are going to come into your first round of committee meetings where you're going to start to see the new reporting structure, and you'll be able to have very clear oversight of the capital projects that sit within your areas of responsibility. But that's basically the consolidation of the whole that you're moving forward with. So I hope you enjoy those new reports. I think they're excellent. We had a look at the first ones at Audit, Risk and Finance this week, and I think they're going to be very useful for the committees. So with those recommendations to Council, Councillor Barker, are you happy to move? Thank you. Do I have a seconder for those? Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Any questions? Discussion? In that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Moving on to the draft internal charter review, Councillor Barker. Thank you, which is the approval. Councillors, you're welcome to go and have a look at the charter. It's obviously attached to the agenda, and it's been moved for Councillor Barker. I'm happy to second that. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Draft annual internal audit plan. Councillor Barker, you happy to move? Thank you. I'm happy to second. Again, I encourage all councillors to have a look at that document. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving to Works and Infrastructure Committee, recommendations to Council from the 28th of September, and I think we'll have one additional one, Robin, as well. Oh, that is, all right. So you've got that tabled as the late item. So, Councillor Walker, do you want to talk us through the ones in the agenda, and then we'll come to the late item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The waste, water and stormwater management plan has been through the committee process, and the recommendation is that full council adopt it. It's been fully discussed. We agree with the content of it, and it's just a matter of procedurally now accepting it at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. It's been moved by Councillor Walker. Do I have a seconder for the plan? Thank you, Councillor Noonan. Any questions? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Moving on to the Regional Landfill Business Unit Treasury Policy.
The same applies there. We've had some adjustments occurring relating to recycling and things of that nature. Again, it's been fully discussed and approved at the committee level, and now it's a matter of procedurally adopting it here.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Moved by Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor Barker. Any questions? Discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Now we've got the Saltwater Creek Bridge. Councillor Walker.
The same procedure applies. This is one which got overlooked from a previous meeting, and now to keep it in accordance with the requirements, it's brought in as this late item now.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Been moved by Councillor Walker. Do I have a seconder for that project? I'm happy to second that. Any questions or discussion? I'll put the question. Councillor Noonan.
What does that take the total budget to, please, on that item?
To go to an officer who may or may not have an answer on that one.
Sorry, through the chair, I actually didn't hear that question.
Well, clarification on the total budget for the Saltwater Creek. There's an additional unbudgeted 300,000. I just wondered what that takes it up to.
So, so through the chair, the total value of the project is 1.2 million, and the shortfall is at 300, and that's what we've requested.
So does that answer the question? 1.5, 1.5 or 1.2?
1.2.
Total 1.2 is the total budget of the 300. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. And then we've got one late item, one, Councillor Walker, which is on the screen. Okay, here it is, up on the screen. Which is
again, this is the result of the asset management plan, the discussions with that. The agenda item has got the detail there. It's something that, again, we're remaining adaptable to changing circumstances, and so that's the result of that.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor Barker. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Now, thank you, Councillor Walker. We'll move on to the Regional Transport Committee of the 3rd of October. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Regional Transport Committee asks that the council approve the Nelson Regional Land Transport Program for 2015 to 21 to be varied and to include a total of 4.97 million for noise improvements and 350,000 for safety enhancements on the state highway network, spread over the 2018-21 financial years, and I'd like to move that.
Thank you, Councillor Noonan. I'm happy to, Deputy Mayor's happy to second. Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Just as background to this one, this is there were projects that came in through the National Land Transport Fund as we got our feedback from that. The NZTA didn't have much detail on these ones, so we had to look at them subsequent to the adoption of the Regional Land Transport Plan. There was some consideration as to whether we needed to go and do a re-consultation hearing submissions process for it. The committee felt that was unnecessary, that we had a full understanding of these issues in relation to the views of our community. They've been submitted on many, many times before, and we were happy to move through, so we didn't feel that they tipped the significance and engagement policy requiring a consultation, so we've added them in, and so they can progress with in a more timely manner, which is very good. I'm going to put it. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Community Services Committee for October.
Yes, as Chair of the committee, I'd like to ask that the Council confirm that and adopt the Property and Facility Assets Management Plan for 18 to 28, amended to reflect the adjustments in the long-term plan. I just need to say that this asset management plan includes other committee items, so it would pay for the councillors to look at that if they haven't already, and I brought it to the attention of the relevant chairs so that they were aware of it going through. So I'd like to move that.
Thank you, Councillor Noonan, and Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Any questions or discussions? Councillor Courtney.
I just want to say stress how important this plan is, because it helps us manage our properties. It's bringing together, actually, I think, from memory, a couple of plans now into one, and helps us manage our properties and facilities, our assets better. And the principle of it is to sets out the principles and priorities of managing our assets, and nothing is more important than that. I know that we have other asset management plans, but this one, if I recall, was 250 pages, something like that. So it is quite an involved document, and I thank the staff for preparing it. It was a big read, but it does mean that we manage our assets in a more efficient and transparent way, and I think and it helps us too with our renewals and our maintenance. So I just want to say that it's an excellent piece of work, and it will certainly help us over the next 10 years, the next decade. It's a living document, as we've been told, and that's understandable, because as things improve and procedures and methods of doing things improve over time, you need to adapt and change, and that's what we do with this document. So I'm very happy to, when we think we have 1.5, is it, Your Worship, $1 billion worth of assets, is it? Just about that. It is an important, very important plan.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. I think about 1.44 at the moment, but it was as at the end of August. And look, just speaking to this one, thank you for that endorsement, Councillor Courtney. And it's a bit unfortunate that I'm going to have to say to the Chair and Deputy Chair of the committee that this is one of the plans that's on my watch list. It's not one that I am completely sold on. I accept that we're doing a procedural step today, so and the Group Manager and the Chief Executive are aware that it has been flagged by me as one that needs some further work. It is a consolidation of a rather odd range of things, and I think we need to just have a bit more of a look at it to probably get it up to a fit for purpose governance document. So I'm sorry to have a disagreeing view with you, Councillor Courtney, at this stage in the meeting, but I have to say I flagged it because I think we as a council need to do some further work around fees and charges, particularly in relation to our venues. There are some, certainly a number of emails that I'm receiving in relation to equity issues on fees and charges, and I just want us to spend some time having a look at that to make sure that we have that right. There are a range of, it's an odd one because it's got matters such as forestry in it, from memory, that sit under the governance committee, flowing through to the Forestry Advisory Group. So yeah, it is just a little bit of an oddity, and I think we probably just need to spend a bit more time on it, which we will do. And of course today, as you know, for the chairs of the committees, this is, as Councillor Walker said, this is the procedural step that we must go through post adopting the LTP. But as the chairs know, I have, as Mayor, flagged to say you need to start your getting ready for your activity management plan and asset management plan next reviews, and the Chief Executive is preparing a program that will start in about March next year, I think. So we're ready to go again. It's a continual cycle. Councillor Noonan, as the mover, you right of reply.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, interesting hearing what you're saying, because that's exactly what I was thinking, that I'd like to actually have a clean slate and have another look at this, and we may end up where we have. This actually, what we've incorporated in this meeting is actually there's very few additions to the 2015 plan, so there wasn't a lot of changes in this particular document. I do have some ideas of how we need to look at our levels of service and how we need to deliver. I might be brave and say that I don't think the document of this size is actually a governance document. I think it's actually in here, which I've got today, is there is governance in here, but there's a lot of operational. And I think it's important that we take the operational separately, and our governance document should be quite a lot smaller, giving direction, and the rest of it should be looked at as an operational document. I have spoken to the Chief Executive about my views on that, and my group managers, so it might be a little bit different from normal, but I don't think it hurts to have a new look at things from time to time, and I think that early next year we'll start to do work on that, so thank you. So I'd like to move.
Thank you. It's a heads up to the Community Services Committee about what's coming. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Aye, against, carried. Now moving on to the Planning and Regulatory Committee. Councillor McGurk, do you want to do the moving and I'll do the seconding?
Yeah, I'm happy to move that we, in the appointment of Stephen Lawrence as the primary on second commander of the Marathon Act, and appoint Brett Edwards as the original and the alternative Adrian Humphreys and the growth. One and two, they are from TDC and the Bulk Council, so we actually organise between the three top and south regional councils.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to second. Any questions on this one? Debate. I'll put it. All those in favour? Aye, against, carried.
Happy to move that we adopt the Environment Activity Management Plan.
Thank you. I'm happy to second. Councillor Walker, seconding. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye, against, carried.
Next one is that we approve the additional proposed amendments to the Industrial Resource Management Plan to take into account the implement the National or NPS for plantations forestry.
Thank you. And I'm happy to second. Any questions? Debate? I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye, against, carried. Moving on to the Governance Committee. Councillor Barker.
I will move the recommendation in item 6.6.1 for the setting of remuneration agreements with council controlled trading organisations.
Thank you, that's great. And do I have a seconder for that one? Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Any questions or debate? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye, against, carried. Thank you. Right, next item is the Mayor's report, and I just need to get a couple of items of business in order so that I can speak to that report. There's just a couple of things I want to cover off, so I'm just going to take a brief adjournment for 5 minutes, so have a stretch for 5 minutes while I just get my paperwork in order, and we'll commence again at 10. Thank you. Seats again. We've got a quorum in the room. We have got a quorum in the room. Lovely, so we're back on live streaming and the meeting's coming back into session. I'll invite you all to take your seats. So we're at the Mayor's Report. The Mayor's Report is on page 36 and it's just a brief update on the Mayor's Fund. There's one item there. There are a couple of verbal updates that I wish to give this morning. One is in relation to the announcement from Kiwibank yesterday. I am extremely disappointed with the announcement from Kiwibank in relation to the Stoke Bank. I have formally expressed that view to Kiwibank. As a bank that has continues to deliver messages about the importance of a community focus and doing what's right for New Zealand, I think that decision is one that does not fit well with the Stoke community, and I would have an expectation as Mayor that when significant decisions like that are going to be made, that there is an engagement with me as Mayor. I have to say Westpac took that step and contacted me personally around that, engaged through that process. Kiwibank have not delivered that courtesy, and I have written to them to suggest to them that they need to do so, that they need to come and talk with the Stoke community. I have received a letter in relation to both Kiwibank and New Zealand Post Services, and as a council I will be taking a very strong and active engagement in relation to these decisions. It is critically important that our fastest growing community has services available to it. And as we move through change in banking and certainly digital IT change, yes, there are going to be change around services, but if you are a bank that is committed to New Zealand and your customers, you deliver those messages and you make that change, in my view, in a very different way to the way Kiwibank has done that. And I don't say that lightly. I don't criticise organisations lightly, but I have to say, in this case, it falls well short of what I consider to be appropriate customer service and appropriate engagement with local government. So just be aware that I have taken that step and have engaged both directly with Kiwibank, and certainly will be providing a media release out. If it hasn't gone this morning, it'll be going any minute in relation to that matter. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I applaud what you're doing. And it's not just Kiwibank. The other one that is just as serious to me is the Post Office. And in fact, I find the decision regarding the Post Office appalling, to tell the truth. As the Mayor said, Stoke is the fastest growing suburb that we have. Kiwibank is the only bank left in Stoke. And if you look at the heart of that area, you've got the post office, you've got the bank. Just along the road a little way, we've got the library. And it's easy walking distance, especially for the elderly, to do their shopping either in Strawbridge Square or at Countdown. So it is actually a bit of a heart as far as that community is concerned. 25% of the population are over the age of 65. Where are these folk to go? It has been suggested from the post office that they come to Nelson. I think that's actually a silly suggestion. How are you going to get these elderly folk, complete with either a frame or whatever, to get on the bus and go to Stoke and do their business, and go to town and do their business? You remember, all of you, that when we had a problem with our local dairies being knocked off, we gathered them in this room, you were here, with the police and other community people, and we successfully engaged, and from that day on there has not been another robbery. That's because we stay in touch with our community and we understand their concerns, and they know that, they feel better. This one here, especially with the post office, is awful. That is part of the identity of that area. A post office and a dairy, you know, they're part of a community link. So I'm calling two messages today. One to those members sitting around this table that have strong affiliations with this coalition government. I'm asking you to go to your respective parties and lobby like mad to stop this from happening. You're in a unique position to do so, and I'm calling you out to go and do it on behalf of your community. And just remember, when this decision is made, some staff in the post office will have a very unhappy Christmas. So we need to back the Mayor, each and every one of us, and the Stoke community to hold on to that little piece of identity that's been taken away.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Noonan, and then I'm not going to do a full round because I'm just flagging this up as a verbal today.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I imagine the feeling around the table is fairly mutual, and I wonder whether we instruct you to write a letter from the whole council rather than just yourself, that we actually support you.
I am speaking on behalf of the whole council as Mayor, and I'm more than that, Councillor, and a letter from the Office of the Mayor is a letter on behalf of the entire Nelson community.
And I think that
it needs to be viewed as such.
And I think also that the council supports that wholeheartedly as part of it, rather than a separate council thought. I've just, if you don't mind, I've just Googled the mission of Kiwibank, and they said when they came to life in 2002, their mission actually was clear: to win the hearts of Kiwis by providing better service, better products, lower fees and better interest rates. Well, if they're not going to keep their office and their bank in Stoke, they're not providing a better service at all. They're failing badly, and I completely support your move to approach them. Thank you.
I'll take one more on this subject and from Councillor Barker, and then I'm going to move on to the next item because we've got our guests here from you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've just read your media release, which I fully support and endorse. I think this is an occasion when we can work with Grey Power, because it definitely will affect my neighbours and my friends and my people, my community in Stoke, very detrimentally, but not just the elderly. I know it's going to be a real inconvenience for me and most other people. This is very, very sad to see, and I would like to see that maybe we could have a little bit of attitude coming into it to stop this from happening.
I have Grey Power meet with me on a quarterly basis, and we have engaged already with New Zealand Post on several occasions over the last 12 to 18 months, which is why I found it very surprising for the engagement to come from Kiwibank and from New Zealand Post to be a pro forma email and nothing more than that sent into my inbox within 2 hours of them making their media release, given we have actively engaged them for over 18 months. So we need to see some better engagement from these key organisations, and we'll certainly be pursuing that. So the other item, just in addition to the item that we need to move through that's in the report, just as in relation to the Nelson Southern Link investigation and Rocks Road walking and cycling project, that we are making very good progress on that. I circulated a letter to you all probably about a month ago, was sent through to you, which was a letter from Mr. Fergus Gammy, who is Chief Executive of NZTA. You'll recall that we had some workshop discussions with NZTA, and they had indicated to us that they were thinking around sending writing a paper for their board to put the Nelson Southern Link investigation, Rocks Road walking and cycling project through some stages that were going to slow things down. I was not happy with that, and have engaged with the board of NZTA in some discussions about the importance of moving forward with these projects in a timely way. He has agreed with my view on that, and has been very proactive in engaging, and the project is now going to proceed right through into the next stages. Meetings have been set up with that, and it does not need to go back to the board at this stage. So that is going to mean for a speedier process. I felt it was critically important for us. We have waited a long time to get these projects through. I have advocated on this community's behalf on numerous occasions to progress both the Rocks Road walking and cycling project, written, as you will recall, to the previous Chief Executive NZTA to say, come on, this needs to move forward. We've got that commitment and I'm very pleased with that. What I am not particularly happy about, I have to say, is that we have communications out in the public that this council is doing something to delay this process. Now, I am not aware of any steps by this council to delay that process, and in fact the exact opposite. Certainly my advocacy has been of we need to get on with this. If any of you are aware of steps that have been taken to cause delays on these projects moving forward, then you need to come to me directly and identify those, because I am certainly aware of none. The Chief Executive has taken this as a key objective for the Chief Executive and his full commitment right from the senior management of this council and from me as Mayor, and I would have thought from you as elected members. So I'm not sure where those comments are coming from, but if they are being made and you're aware of anyone in this organisation or any of the steps that are causing delays, then you need to take the responsible step and come and talk to me about that. So, things are going well from my perspective. We're underway, we've got a commitment, we've got the funding, the Regional Transport Committee was effective in getting the next stages for the business case into the National Land Transport Fund. That meant it went off to be moderated across the country and it was given funding. It is no longer a Crown-funded project. In my view, that is a very positive step. So you will recall that the Southern Link investigation was presently Crown-funded. That meant it didn't sit within the National Land Transport Fund. What the Regional Transport Committee has done is not just as Nelson, but as Marlborough, Nelson and Tasman have advocated for it to go into the National Land Transport Fund, and we have been successful. So that is a major, major step forward. What we now need to do is to make sure that we follow a very thorough but timely process to get this to move forward. And one of the questions that we have put to NZTA is, can we progress this sufficiently? Because you'll remember that we have two projects that go hand in glove. Councillor Laurie, you can put your pen down. I have noted you, and I know that you're desperate to say something, but you'll just have to wait till I'm finished. So where we're getting to with this one is that you know that NZTA have been very clear that the two projects go hand in glove, and you've heard NZTA representatives make that very clear. They need to go hand in glove. What I want to reiterate is the why, to make sure you understand the why, but also what we're trying to achieve in getting these things through in as quick a way as we can. Because I don't believe there is any one of us sitting at this table that is satisfied with the current walking and cycling provision that we've got around that waterfront. I can say that with absolute confidence, that there is not one person here that is happy with the situation we have at the moment of very, very narrow spaces for walking and cycling. And we have continued as a council to write to NZTA to say we want to get this resolved. Furthermore, as a council, we have gone up to apply under the previous government for urban cycleways funding. And I went and met with the leads for the urban cycleway project in the last term of council and successfully secured a significant sum of money for these projects. We took an approach of saying a whole of city to sea linkage, and we've managed to progress both the Haven end and we're moving at the Te Huna Nui end, and we're wanting to get this piece in the middle addressed. And so my messages back to NZTA are continually, is there a way that we can move this forward fast? Now, several of you have also got that message, and I'm pleased to hear that. But the reason the projects have to go hand in glove is that whatever we do on Rocks Road is part of a transport network, a major transport network for the whole top of the South Island. And it is inevitably going to have to go through a quite complicated, I suggest, unless we do next to nothing out there, a quite complicated resource consent process. It sits in a coastal environment. And for those of you who are commissioners at this table, you know that the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement has got some very clear direction around structures and changes in the coastal environment, and now some very challenging case law through Supreme Court decisions around what can and can't happen in the direction of the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement. So if we are going to put a project up the walking and cycling project into that process, it has to be backed by an absolutely robust process where we have considered alternatives, because that is what the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement asks us to do, and so does the Resource Management Act. So we've got to go through these steps to get to a project that has got a chance of being consented. And for those of you who have sat at this table and gone through a process previously where you didn't have your ducks in a row and you didn't succeed in getting a designation process through, you know jolly well that if you don't have your ducks in a row and you haven't done your due diligence and you haven't got your data, then you put yourselves in a very compromised and expensive position going through to achieve the outcome. So we are going to go through a process to give us the absolute best chance of achieving the outcomes that we're all seeking. We're going to have a go at trying to get that walking and cycling project moving ahead as quickly as we can. And my efforts working with NZTAs and the Chief Executives and Mr Laverdis's have been very much in that direction, and that is the approach that we're taking. What I am not keen to see is I'm not keen to see this process politicised. This is an NZTA process, and it is in the National Land Transport Plan, and our engagement is with NZTA and the Board of NZTA. The Board of NZTA have control of the National Land Transport Plan, and that is where we work. I am disappointed to see comments from the Associate Minister that is, in my view, a comment that crosses directly over the role of the Board of NZTA and the National Land Transport Plan, which says in a predetermined way that these projects have absolutely no alignment with the government policy statement. Now, that does not hold water, because if these projects had no alignment with the government policy statement, would they be in the National Land Transport Plan? No. They wouldn't be able to be in the National Land Transport Plan, and they are. And we need to be very clear about what we're trying to achieve here and sticking to a good process, because if we do that, we'll get a good outcome. So I'm just going to encourage you. I know several of you, Councillor Laurie, and you've been busy waving your pen at me from the moment you stepped into the room.
And you've been busy talking.
And that is my prerogative while I'm the Mayor delivering the Mayor's report, because the Mayor's the only person who can deliver the report and update you. But what I would say to you is that this is now sitting in the National Land Transport Plan. Stick with that process. It's a good process, and we have got it well resourced, and we will deliver the best outcome we can for the people of Nelson. And we're working to run a robust process and try and get that piece and the connection, because we've done the other ends, as fast as we can. If you want to go and advocate, and you can, through your political roles, several of you have political roles and political interests, and you want to go and advocate for a special fund of Crown funding, which you may want to do, and you may be successful in doing that, and you may want to get a special fund, pool of Crown funding, and you want to see if you can throw that in through the budget mix to get that in here, then you go and do that, and I'll say thank you to you for doing that. But my role as Mayor is to run through the National Land Transport Plan and to work with the system that I've got. I will continue to talk to ministers about the importance of this, but I am very clear that this is a board process through NZTA. And we've gone through a process previously where we've had Crown funding and we've had the pre-election lolly scrambles and all the rest of it. And with due respect to those of you who have central government intentions, for those of who are committed to local government, actually we get a bit brassed off with that. Now we're in a good process with the NZTA. Let's just stick to it and see what we can achieve. If you can add some money into the bucket through Crown funding, well and good. But advocating against the Nelson Southern Link investigation is advocating against the Rocks Road Walking and Cycling Project. Just be very clear on that, because if you stop the investigation, then you are not going to have the robust data that you're going to need to get a consent. So let's stick to what we're doing. Right, Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So you said that things are going very well.
Yes,
as far as the public's concerned, things aren't going at all. Nothing is happening. And if you're a member of the public who's interested in this subject, you might go online and you might look at NZTA's Southern Link, Nelson Southern Link study website. That has not been updated since September 2017. That's the latest update we have from NZTA. So, Madam Mayor, with respect, while you may think things are going very well, the people think nothing is happening, and when they go to NZTA and they look on their website, clearly nothing is happening. You talk about individuals trying to get more Crown money for our waterfront. Why aren't we trying to do that as a council? We'd have a lot more influence if we together actually approached government or the Crown for extra money for our waterfront to make it a priority than if it was just one or two of us. So if you are talking to NZTA, could you please tell them to update their website? And could you also consider actually council putting an application for extra Crown funding so that we can get some action on our waterfront?
Councillor, on two subjects there. In terms of the public understanding what is going on here, we are working with NZTA on the communications around this. It has been and working at pace. They have had messaging back from me around the importance of delivering that communication to the public. They want to make sure that they've got a project plan in place and they're getting that in order now, and I expect that to roll out. In the meantime, what I will do is, as Mayor, because I think it's important that I've updated you first, as elected members, that's my feel respectful thing to do, and to our youth councillor who's here today, and then we'll prepare, as on the back of the Mayor's report, some work. I'll work with Mr Shattuck and we'll do a little bit of an update in terms of where things are for us, and we'll put that in our Nelson, because I think there has been an awful lot of misinformation being generated around these projects, and I want to make sure that we are delivering very clear messages as a council. In terms of applying for additional Crown funding, that is a conversation that I am always having at every step with ministers, and whether it is through the Provincial Growth Fund, whether there are some other pools of money to move forward on this. But I have to say the biggest challenge at the moment is for the ministers involved in this project to understand the hand-in-glove nature of the two projects, and that is the important part. And so we will be doing some further work on that. I think the Associate Minister will be back from her leave and we'll be able to have that conversation with her, and I'll certainly be making arrangements to do that. Right, moving on to the...
Mayor, sorry, Mayor, you didn't answer my question. Why can't we, as a council, we've just talked about how you're writing to Kiwibank, which I totally support. Why can't you, as Mayor, write to government to apply for, to ask, to request more Crown funds so that we can actually get some progress on our waterfront? Because it'll be a lot easier to make the waterfront safer for pedestrians and cyclists in the near future than it will be to build a whole new arterial route. So why can't we actually ask the government to help us do that?
Well, we have already written in relation to the Provincial Growth Fund, so certainly these projects have gone into the mix for the Provincial Growth Fund in priority areas, and that's been flagged, as I said, by the three councils on the top of the South Island, so that's gone through. What I'm wanting to do is to enter into discussions, because I'm concerned about the statements from the Associate Minister, and before I would go making applications for funding on behalf of this community, I build the relationships with the Minister, and I can see from statements that have been circulated from the Associate Minister that she's formed a view in relation to this project and the GPS, and I think if we're going to land this in terms of any additional funding, the important thing is to be having the conversations first with the Minister. That's the approach I have always taken with all of the ministers, and I've found it is most effective. You need to have good information before you put in your applications and good understanding. So I expect that to move forward. We will keep you as updated as we can, won't we, Pat?
Absolutely.
And today was a good opportunity to let you know there's been some good progress while I've been away, and so well done to the team. Thank you for moving that forward. And we'll move on. So, on to the Mayor's report. There's a very brief item there, some funding that I have been able to apply from the Mayor's Fund, and thank you, Council, for allowing me to have that fund. I find it is very handy. There are always more applications than there is money, but where I can make some small contributions, it is good. So, moving the recommendation in the Mayor's report to receive it, I will move. So I move. Thank you, Councillor Skinner. Seconded. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Now, what's next up? QV. Welcome. We've got some representatives today from QV, so welcome to the meeting. And we have Gail Smits and Craig Russell here, and Theo. Theo, are you going to join our representatives? You're most welcome to. So welcome to the meeting. I would never have to have a grumpy conversation with QV like I've just had to say about Kiwibank, would I? Or New Zealand Post. No, because you engage with us extremely well, and I want to thank you for that and the work that you do to support us in local government. It is really highly valued. So you've been going through a major process for us in the region, doing the re-evaluations, and you're here today to talk us through what's here. So, so welcome back, Gail. Good to see you again, and welcome, Craig. So just whenever you're ready, press that on off button and away we go.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You okay if I'm seating properly? Yes. Okay. I'm Gail Smits. I'm the revaluation manager for QV, and Craig Russell is our manager based in Nelson. So what we've been doing, probably working on it probably since about beginning of July, is your general revaluation, and I believe you've all had an opportunity to have a look at this, so we'll go through it between Craig and I. Hopefully we can answer any questions. It's actually been quite an exciting revaluation to be working on because there's been quite a lot of news, quite a lot happening. So we'll just go through, so basically we'll just run through some of the process that we do, what the overall results are, and what's happening from here on in. So quite a few of you would have been through the whole revaluation process and how it affects your rates modelling and such like, but just to give you a brief rundown, the revaluations are all set by legislation. We run under the Rating Valuations Act, which says quite clearly what we can and what we can't do, how we're measured. We have an external auditor who's the Office of the Valuer General, who are part of Land Information New Zealand, and they look at the work that we've done, and this whole revaluation was approved at audit last Friday. Part of that revaluation process, it's really been very, very interesting because there's been lots of sales out there, so we have to look at all of those sales, and these form the values that we've produced that are going to be delivered out to your ratepayers from next Wednesday. Sorry. All right. Oops, I'll just go back one. So what we're doing, your rating valuation is a snapshot in time. So your effective date of your revaluation is the 1st of September. So if the market's still moving, we could be, it is actually going past that 1st of September date, but everything that we're doing as part of our rating valuations is relevant to where we've assessed the market to be at that 1st of September. So your rating valuations don't include chattels, but apart from that, what we've assessed is what we consider as a reasonable market value for a property. So we're not setting the value levels, the community sets the values, and we're just interpreting them, and they're in the rating valuations that have been produced. So this is a really, I'll just get my pointer there. Sorry, pointer. I'm using this one here. So overall, we're on capital value, we're a 32% increase. I mean, your main rating base is a land value rating base. I think overall we're looking at land values. I've got them broken down in further slides, but we're looking about about 45% increase in land values overall, which is varying a bit. Your residential sector overall is about a 48% increase, in your commercial sector is about 35%. So quite a bit of a shift in the values, but plenty's been selling, plenty to base it on. So as far as the pie of value, which basically is where things shift in sectors as far as rates. I mean, this is the capital value, which isn't so relevant to you in your rating sector, but what we're seeing here, for the 2015, 70% of your value was in your residential market, and now we've got 72%. So you've got that big chunk of residential property, but of course it's gone up at a higher rate percentage-wise than other sectors, so it's actually now a bigger part of your rating base as far as capital value. I've actually, and what is actually reduced in there is your business properties have come back. I'll just show you on the land value because this is probably more relevant to your rating base. So once again, fairly similar. So you've now got 76% of your whole land value of your district is residential, which is up 2%, and your business sector here has come down about 2%, and then not a lot of change in your rural and your other. What other is, a lot of your other properties are actually non-rateable properties, or partially rateable properties. They'll be your parks, your reserves, schools, that sort of property. And there's also a sector called utilities, so these are like your infrastructure assets like your sewer and water and things like that. So they're not part of your residential or your commercial sectors. This is really quite interesting. I mean, in all the years I've been working in the Nelson area, we've sort of had this really, really flat market for a long time with, you know, we do a revaluation and the values change 2% or 3% or whatever, but I mean, this is at our last general revaluation date back in 2015, and so from here, from about as soon as we actually got the values done, we've sort of seen this big lift in value. So we were looking at about a 1% per month lift in the residential market, right through probably till the end of last year, and now it's sort of slowed a wee bit. But sort of through this year, we're still sort of seeing about 0.5% a month.
Yes,
or so, Craig,
that'd be about right.
Yeah. So I mean, still appears to be a good, strong market out there. So this is why all the residential sector's gone up, because we're reflecting what's been done in the property market. So overall here you can see the percentages down the side. So this is percentage growth over 3 years from the 2015 values to the 2018. And I mean, this is very, very strong. Through this year and through New Zealand, QV's involved with 18 revaluations, and I'd have to say there's a few areas that have had some quite strong growth, like yourself. Like, I mean, Hamilton, with its Auckland influences, sort of had like 50% land value lifts and things like that. Wellington's also is indicating quite strong lifts in their values as well, in the land values. But this is all based on sales, so obviously the properties that are selling much higher than that 2015 level. So. But bearing in mind that it's average, each individual property, we're not just putting plastering a whole value change over a whole district. Different properties are valued at different levels depending on their attributes. So, what's happening?
The grey is what, the browns?
Okay, the grey is your land value, your average land value, and the brown's your average capital value. So on a national basis, you're a really high average capital value. What we've found in some parts of New Zealand, I mean, that low end of the market has really gone up significantly, but it's come off very low basis. I mean, your lower end of market has gone up significantly, but we're not, I mean, we're not like entry levels where it just looked low on national standards. I mean, you're very high values on national standards. So even the high end of your properties have gone up quite substantially, high end properties. So just a summary of what's happening there. So overall we're looking at 36% on the capital value increase and 48.5% on land values over those 3 years. We have got the first home buyer, particularly the first home buyer lending criteria and everything in some areas has pushed things up, but I mean that does have a ceiling, although it's not applicable to new houses. Any areas that you think probably special mention there?
Well, I think the likes of Nelson South and Toi Toi, you know, they're definitely entry-level sort of locations, and they've had some pretty strong lifts over the last 3 years, percentage-wise anyway. Yeah.
Business property. So what I've done there, I've just sort of broken down a few sectors there. So I mean, overall, just get my specs on. Overall, we're about 25% on the land value on the commercial sector, and just over 30%. Sorry, there's land value, it's your commercial there. Industrial generally is seeing bigger lifts, particularly on the land. I've broken this down to your central city. Your central city is not seeing as large a value increases as everywhere else as far as your commercial. Your motels and hotels, this is quite strong here, your land value lift for motels and hotels, but under rating valuation rules we have to value your land as vacant, and some of those motels and hotels are actually sitting on residential land rather than commercial land. So that's driving what's happening to their land value. It could be moving different from commercial zone land. And also quite strong, quite strong around the, quite strong around the port industrial with big increases here, you know, around about the 40% land value lifts. So you've got a great economy, and that's just keeping demand for the values up. Commercial accommodation, New Zealand's in a boom of tourist nights, and I mean Nelson's always been very strong for domestic tourism, but international tourism, it's strong, and it keeps that market alive there as well.
You've got the new airport terminal open, so it's only, you know, that's what's driving it, that sort of thing, isn't it? So
I have to say, I came through that this morning, and it's first time I've come through the new one. Look, very, very smart. It's very good. It's a very nice. It looked beautiful when I arrived this morning. The sunshine looks stunning. Right, so CBD, we've taken into account with your valuations that there are vacancy levels in some of your office spaces, and probably just a wee bit more so than 2015. All those factors come into account when we're doing the valuations. Some of the other things that we have to take into account, particularly with your business properties, if you know we consider they're earthquake prone. April this year we sent out a whole lot of surveys to your business properties. They were asking lease information, which we use to get average efficient rentals. And also we were asking things like ratings for whether they were earthquake prone. We've also looked at all other records for that, but this isn't a new thing, because of course when we did your last reevaluation we also looked at the same sort of things. So some properties may not have grown to the same level of others because of the way they're rated as far as their structure, and may have some degree of earthquake prone. You haven't got a lot of rural properties. Rural lifestyle, these are like this, the farmlets, like 2 hectares typically. That would be typical, wouldn't it?
Right.
Yeah. Once again, generally lifestyle properties tend to move at the same sort of levels as your high valued residential, and this is no exception. So we're looking at about a 30% capital value lift and about 44% on land value for your lifestyle properties. You've only got a few rural properties, your dairy is actually quite a high lift, because what we're actually seeing nationwide now with a lot of dairy properties, some areas they're actually at a lower level than they were 3 years ago, but there's a whole lot of other influences there with them being close to the city. So overall, this is just showing you overall growth, just looking back a few years. So looking back here on your revaluations, as at these revaluation dates, so generally a lot of this growth here was a pretty flat market. So that generally is like growth due to new work, new buildings, subdivision. So that's lifting that there. But then this 32% lift here is, I mean, some of this is growth, but I mean, sorry, natural growth as far as building consent work, but it is also is just indicating that the market's very, very strong. As far as your building consents and everything, your council advises us every month we get a list of all the new work, and so that is all accounted for in between general revaluations along with subdivision work. Sorry? 16 billion. I think that's billions. Yeah. I might just go to this last one first, just to give some of these key dates. So as I said, it's a snapshot in time of that 1st of September on a rising market, or, you know, some areas that you've probably seen a lot of publicity on, like Auckland. And I mean, in some of those properties now it was a high market, and the market's changed. In Auckland, probably some are actually selling less than that value of a year ago. But I mean, we're looking 1 September at this stage, we're still looking at a relatively strong market. So today your public notice has gone out and you've got them on display, the values. So legally you're required to have them on display for the whole of the objection period. So an objection is the official name for when people are allowed to dispute these values. Next Wednesday, your owner's notices are being delivered. Now, we're trying something new this year. We're pleased to have you on board for emailing. This is Wellington was emailed last week, and you're second. there's always been much dispute whether that was it met the legislation, whether we could actually send by email rather than posting, but it's all been worked through and it's all go. So I think about a third of your properties actually are going to have their rating valuations emailed to them next week. Yep. So the rest will be waiting till they come by mail. So they've got till 18th of January to dispute those if they so wish, and you'll be using them to set your rates base from 1st of July next year. So as far as the objections go, we have a professional call centre who, I mean, we can certainly, your people will get phone calls, and we can, I think you've got our FAQs and everything, and we're happy to talk to your call centre, but do channel people onto that 0800 number, because we can actually talk them through some of their issues. I mean, they may have, you know, natural fears about increases in rates and increases in values. I mean, we've got standard lines that we can tell them that, you know, that it relates to what's happening in the market with the values. And we would encourage that any objections were online, because we can get them processed quicker, more accurately, we get all the information, but any objection in writing is accepted. So that's my very, very quick rundown of what's been happening. I'm saying it's a pretty exciting market out there, and it's, you know, it's really quite challenging and quite enjoyable when you're doing a revaluation that's got so much interest in it. So, and I imagine it will have quite a bit of public interest as well.
So, thank you, Gail. Anything you want to add, Craig?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay, thank you. Because I'm a very curious cat, while you've been speaking, I've just gone, they're actually up, they're actually up now, Theo. I'm just taking a big, and I'm going to close that iPad and not look at that again. Gosh, they really have moved around, haven't they? They're quite big changes. Right, so we've got, thank you, Gail. Again, just in context, your view is this is, you know, in a New Zealand context, these are big, pretty big moves across, particularly across the residential and industrial. Or are they?
Some places, like we're probably looking like Palmerston North had big increases, Wellington, Hamilton, all fairly large increases. We've also revalued Selwyn recently. Selwyn,
yes, I did see that one.
We're only looking at about a 5% lift but of course we've got quite a lot of supply in the Canterbury area at the moment, so they weren't seeing the same increases. But on a nationwide basis, good strong increases showing the desirability.
All right, thank you, Gail. What I'm going to do is just go over several councillors with questions. Councillors, I will just flag to you as I'm looking at those numbers, and I'm looking at some of the movements around both land value and versus capital value, and I'm, you know, seeing some trends there that I would pick. I'm seeing some movements as Gail has identified in terms of residential versus commercial, and then a breakdown further on commercial. I've already flagged to the council, and we've taken some steps already around our inner city rating. But what I will flag to you now, as I start to move through to the annual plan, I'm looking at those numbers, and it just further reinforces my view of the steps that we've taken around the adjustments to the percentage splits as how they go for the inner city commercials versus you know, commercial sector versus the rating system as a whole, of the importance of continuing with that work. And it may be, I'm just doing some early thinking about that, whether that needs to see some acceleration, so just on the basis of these revaluations. So we'll just have some discussion about that probably as we go through the annual plan process is the right time for that. And it may be that we're doing some thinking for some steps moving forward. As always, when I look at this, Council, as you know, I have a preference for capital rating, and I again look at this, and I'll have some thinking about my views on that as well. At this stage, I know I don't have, we haven't got the support around that capital rating just now, but we again at some point we will have another discussion around capital rating versus land value. Councillor Noonan, you're first, and then Councillor Barker, and then Councillor Courtney, and then Councillor Skinner, and then Councillor Laurie.
Goodness me, thank you. Yes, they have been up on the internet for at least a night. Interesting. Look, I'm just wondering, you've got 16 billion in total. Do you know what the previous figure was?
I have it here. Exactly?
Oh, roundabout. Is it 30% less?
40%?
It's about the 12.
12 billion, so it's gone from 12 billion to 16 billion. Thank you. That's the first question. The other question, I'm only going to have one more question, so because there are others wanting to ask you questions. The Mayor's alluded to the capital value versus land value. Have you got a sense of what would happen to residential rates if we went to capital value?
I tend to leave rating expertise to you people.
Theo?
There's winners and losers when you switch from a land value model. We've done in the past, we've looked at it, and it just spreads the level of rates. Can you turn your microphone, please?
Oh, I have that one.
It's just to be like the level of rates within category just spreads depending on the relationship between the land value and the capital value.
Can you explain that just a little bit more? If you've got a huge difference, we did have quite a lot of difference in some land values. It's quite a lot lower than others compared to capital value. So
what I'm saying is that you could have a property which has a $200,000 land value but a very high capital value. So when that's under capital value rating, that property will attract a more share of the general rate.
Yeah, right.
But when you've got a relationship where the land value is closer to the capital, the rate.
So less change.
So there's winners and losers.
Okay, I think it's important that we have that's actually heard. Look, I have other questions, but I'll leave it for other councillors, I think, today. Thank you. Thanks. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Bishop. Thank you, Gail and Craig. I'm interested in the effects because, as we know, whenever there's a revaluation, if there are different increases in land value in different parts of the city, we get winners and losers. And sometimes they're significant winners and significant losers. Now, I looked at all the different areas of the city where the different increases have occurred, and some were quite low increases. And I'm really asking Theo, have you had a look at it to see, in terms of the numbers of people that are in these particular areas, will it have a significant effect? Because it always impacts on us because of the valuation, if you live in an area where the values have gone up a huge amount, and there's a large number of them, someone else gets a decrease in rates because their increase hasn't been so much. So is there likely to be an effect?
I believe Theo's done some work on it.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Barker. What I've done is actually looked at locations around the city to see how their values and their rates, implication from the new values. The Port Hills, for instance, they will actually see a 5% reduction. Their values are not going up by the same amount as the average.
I saw they were low.
Yeah, so they will actually see a 5% reduction. Similar effect out for the residential out there in the Glen. The Glen we're seeing a 4.7% reduction. The others are all around about 1 or 2% up or down.
Which areas will see the greatest increase?
Which one will see the greatest increase? Would be Wakatu, which is that Nelson South area, which the values lift, that's 3.8.
Surprise to me, but anyway, that's
that'll be influenced by Tasman Heights. That's within that area, and I think those land values have increased on the back of the future road going in.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Skinner. That's Councillor Courtney, then Councillor.
Getting us confused again. Through you, Your Worship. Gail, thank you for that presentation. I really enjoyed it, and it was the way you delivered it. You said it was exciting and enjoyable, and what really triggered my attention, caught my attention, was your statement here that vacancies in the CBD are relatively low. And then I wrote down the 1st of September, so I want to tell you that something's happening in our CBD, and it's been happening since September. And I would like you to elaborate on that statement where you say vacancies in the CBD of Nelson are relatively low, because that heartened me, and all of us actually.
Sorry. What I'm meaning on a national standard. Oh, sorry.
So my excitement's got to...
Yeah, probably. I'm sorry.
Oh, Gail, no, well, I might retract some of what I've said.
What I'm probably need to express is we're very aware that there are vacancies in some of the commercial properties, and we take this into account when we're valuing properties. So we're not saying all is rosy for some of your particularly your upper floor space, and that is taken into account as part of the valuation process.
Right. So this statement here of yours is nationally. It's not specific to Nelson.
Sorry, I'm saying that there are vacancies most definitely in the Nelson area, and some areas you wouldn't take, perhaps if you were valuing downtown Auckland, where it's 100% occupancy, you wouldn't be making a statement like that. Perhaps there's a few other major cities, and they still, to have a fully occupied building is not generally the norm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Very good. Is it possible for us to get a copy of your presentation? There's a lot of information digested. It's actually... is that right? Okay, thank you. Cheers. And then the other one, with the land value, etc., from a specifically a council perspective of our parks and reserves and sports fields, I know it's hard to put a value on those because they're not in the market to be traded. How are they valued? I mean, how have they increased or decreased in value?
I think they've moved at similar levels to the residential market.
Okay.
They've obviously got a restricted use, and that sort of limits what you can do with them. But I think they have generally followed some of the trends of the residential market.
It's quite interesting how you value land that can't be sold.
Yeah, it's always hard. Yeah.
And you don't actually have sales of land that can't be sold.
No, so that was interesting.
So there's quite a bit of court precedence that says how you actually value land that can't be sold. So you look at like a base value, you look at highest and best use, and it's sort of somewhere in between. So it does tend to move at a similar rate to other land.
Okay, that's good.
But I mean, that's your process for valuing it. As far as your improvements on a lot of those specialised use, generally it does sort of relate to like a cost depreciation.
And golf, for example, golf courses, do they behave any differently? I know some councils
they can behave quite differently because they generally are a commercial use, not a...
Okay.
Yeah.
And probably just following what you said earlier, Madam Mayor, is reflecting on how we value and assess and use our land. This could have another eyeglass over coming forward. I think that, but it reinforces what your comments. I often see the economist Shamel Wakwib, who's spoken at some of the LNG and Z things, and I've generally gone completely opposite whatever he says, and you've reinforced that what he says has generally been quite the opposite.
Councillor Laurie and Councillor McGurk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through the Chair, this going back to an issue that Councillor Courtney was talking about, the vacancy levels in the CBD. Are some of those vacancy levels generated by or influenced by high rents in our CBD?
Okay. Rating valuation is a peculiar beast. It's different from a... if you've got a market valuation. So if you've got a market valuation of your commercial building, if you had particularly high rents, or say it was over rented, that would form part of your value. For a rating valuation, every property that's identical has to be valued the same. So if you were out in an industrial, say you had 3 industrial tilt slab buildings, one was owner occupied, one was empty, one had a really strong lease on it, they all have to have the same value on for rating purposes.
Right.
Okay.
Through the Chair, as you do your research though, do you get a sense of where commercial rents are at in some towns compared to other towns?
Most definitely. Well, I mean, most definitely, because the part of the process for a commercial property is you're looking at an income stream, you're looking what an investor would be prepared to accept, and like any commercial investment, that's what drives the value.
So through the Chair, where I'm going with this is, how do commercial rents in Nelson CBD compare to other regional centres around New Zealand?
Oh, that's a tricky one. Well, I mean, of late, I've just been, we put Grey District is currently at audit. I mean, that's a regional? Provincial? Sorry, probably more provincial. Their levels are quite a bit different from your levels. It varies area to area. I mean, we don't do a study of what's comparing areas of rentals to others, so I can't really comment on that. But all I can say is we've looked at rental levels in your area, and that has formed part of what those values are.
I think rents have generally increased 5 to 10% over the 3 years, and I think cap rates have dropped back a little bit as well, so.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. Some of the questions I had were been asked by Councillor Laurie. I suppose what I'm saying is that, you know, the QV is sort of it's the benchmark, it's the objective valuation of that. So I suppose it's the go-to valuation for whatever. It's objective, it's consistent, and it's been over a period of time. I'm just looking at those figures of CBD, and my initial reaction to it is, should I be concerned about what I'm seeing there?
Observations in other cities through the country, I mean, there's lots of pressures on retail.
Yeah.
You've got online buying, you've got a whole lot of other centres, you've got new centres popping up occasionally. On a nationwide basis, generally most central commercial areas are under pressure.
Yeah. But those figures there, when you're putting it up, the comment I made before is that QVs is the go-to, it's objective, it's consistent, and that's the one that people benchmark against.
Thank you.
And I'm just bringing up what Councillor Laurie says, that what I see there does give me cause for concern, because it demonstrates that there's either a lack of confidence by property owners and property business owners in the CBD. There may be a shift in consumer behaviour. People are buying stuff elsewhere or in other places. I look at some of the building stock, and and the small pool of business owners or property owners there that are probably land banking, for want of a better word. So I'm just wondering, are those factors that could go into that valuation you've arrived at? Like most well-developed CBDs, I mean, we don't get a lot of land sales and a lot of sales. So I mean, we've had to use what sales information we've got. There's been a few sales of properties that of sites that are like to be developed. So I mean, they give us indicators of where that land value level is, those sorts of things. So what I'm saying, on a nationwide basis, I wouldn't say the trends are exceptionally different from other centres. I mean, typically suburban industrial commercial has been rising at a greater rate than central cores. Because of course a lot of typically in most cities, the central core is older buildings. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Nathaniel.
Thank you. Yes, this might not be something that you can answer, but I was wondering if you had any future assessment on whether the growth would continue at this rate, based upon other evaluations you've done in the past history, or if you had any ideas or any thoughts about that.
I'd love to, because I'd just be investing. I'm sorry, we don't. We're actually values are very backward-looking people, because everything we do is based on what has sold. I mean, you can get a feel for where things are happening, and I went to a talk a few weeks ago by this amazing woman who's a demographer. So she was talking about population growths and spikes and things like that. And I mean, and that's probably your answer. You start looking at supply. It's just values of supply and demand.
Yeah. Good question. Something that we obviously have to think about all the time, because our work is future focused. So, yeah, it's an interesting question, Daniel. Thank you both very much for coming in today and for the work that you've been doing. I know it's a huge job doing the revaluations, so well done for getting Nelson complete. And obviously there's quite a lot of work that goes on from now, as you've said, as people receive their advice about what the revaluation is, and you enter into those discussions about where they land. So we will certainly do. I know Theo is well versed in this process, and I've got absolute confidence that he'll be making sure that we get the liaison working well between QV and Nelson City Council. So thank you very much for coming to present. I do want to close off Councillor Noonan, because we're sort of...
I'm just wondering if Mr Aiken's analysis of the increases and decreases in different areas, I think would be very helpful, because people find this extremely important and topical around, and I've already had conversations with people because it's already online. Could we have Is it able, were we able to get a copy of that analysis of what areas are going up and which ones are going down rate-wise?
That's absolutely fine.
That would be wonderful,
Yeah,
thank
we
you.
will. Just remember, councillors, that we're at the stage now where we've got a step to go through before these are confirmed through. So
Sure.
we've got the step that goes through where people can now write in and have the discussion. So until we get through to that date, just, this is the first announcement.
That'd be great.
And they may move subject to discussions with QV. Thank you very much. I'm going to close off, so thank you very much. We're going to take a 15-minute break now for a stretch and a cup of tea, and then we'll come back to do item 9. Thanks, Gail.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. right, we'll resume the meeting. I will recommence with item 9 on the agenda, the communication and engagement strategy. Pages 37 through 40 of your agenda. I'll invite Mr. Shattuck to join the meeting. Welcome, Paul. Paul, are there any changes to the report or anything additional that you want to highlight?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no changes. Take it as read.
Thank you. All right, it's been taken as read. So any questions for Mr. Shattuck? Councillor Courtney, followed by Councillor McGurk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to you, Paul. Have we had one before, a communications and strategy, engagement strategy? I'll tell you why I asked that, because somewhere through here on page, I think it was 38, 4.2, it says, no, was it stronger than the predecessors on 4.1? So I just want to know how long we've had a communication and engagement strategy. That would be my first question.
Okay. Yep. So through you, Madam Mayor, we've always had a communication strategy. It hasn't had governance oversight, and that was one of the things that the Council Mark program did highlight, is that there was that lack of governance oversight into the strategy. So we have traditionally had one which rolls around every year, just at a management level, and this is the purpose of this paper is to actually get delegations to the committee so that there is governance oversight.
Excuse me, through you, Your Worship, what form do you see that taking, Paul? Is it going to be sort of regular meetings, or working on a paper and then not regrouping again, or how's it going to work?
Okay. Through the chair, the strategy would be developed with feedback from the committee directly, and then that would be then adopted by the committee. And we would, as part of the quarterly reporting, we would provide regular updates on the progress of the strategy. And one of the key things that we've been needing or will be wanting for the strategy is to make sure that there's actually sound metrics that we can actually provide measurable and accountable results from it.
Thank you. Well, I think this is an excellent move to bring it out and include the governance. I really do, because I think a lot of businesses, a lot of companies, a lot of organisations throughout New Zealand underestimate, and I claim that this council does too, underestimates the value of communication. I really do. And so I'm heartened by this. I believe in my line of work that I've done for decades, it's been the key to my success, communication, successful communication. And I feel that just a throwaway criticism that I really wanted to, not lightly, I think we need to be more on the front foot. I think we're slow to react. I think we should be early off the blocks on issues. So let's hope this communication strategy encourages to do that. I want to know, because I suspect, like most companies throughout New Zealand, and probably this one too, that we're underspending on communication because we don't appreciate the value of it. So I'd like to ask you, through Her Worship the Mayor, how much do we actually spend on communication? I'm thinking of resources.
Through you, the Mayor, the FTE for the communications team is currently sitting at 6 FTE, or just over 6.2. And that's made up of 3 communications advisors. We have someone looking after the website and digital video production, things like that, and well as someone who looks after our social media and all our editorial content in terms of the Al Nelson publication, both the print and digital. So, and obviously myself as well. So,
thank you for that, and sorry for taking the time, Your Worship, but I am particularly interested in this. Are all of those people full-time people?
Through you, the Mayor, no, they're not all full-time. There's some part-time and amongst there as well.
So the figure is 5, is it? Or 6?
It's 5, 6. Yeah, so it's, at the moment it's 5.75.
Oh, yes.
And so, but we're just about to, we're just adding an additional part-time person into the team very shortly.
Thank you for those answers. I really appreciate it. Has it varied at all much over recent years, that figure? Would you know off the top of your head?
Through you, the Mayor, we have had a slight increase over probably about a couple of years ago for internal communications role. That was a 0.5 to help with internal communications within the organisation, but other than that there has been very little change. You'll see in the paper we have budgeted for a new FTE in the 2019-2020 year for someone who is specifically focusing on engagement to help in that area, because that was an area that we identified as needing improvement, and especially with the helping the infrastructure team through obviously with their projects and multiple levels of engagement that they are required to do and need to do.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I've lost my list. Councillor McGurk, I think is next up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. A couple of questions from me. Thanks, Ms Chaddock. Can you just give an explanation about the decline? I'm looking at paragraph 4.3, the decline in the satisfaction levels.
Through you, the Mayor. We have to realise that these satisfaction levels are taken from the resident survey. The resident survey is a snapshot in time, and so whatever is happening at any given point in time has a significant impact on the results. That's one thing we are actually looking to work with, working with the strategy team to actually identify a better metric to measure satisfaction over time as opposed to taking those snapshots in time. That's something we're working on at the moment. So given what was occurring at that particular point in time, when we did do that survey, that would have an impact on the level of very satisfied people. We have seen the level of dissatisfaction, council communication does not change. It's been very static, but there has been an increase in the number of people who are either don't know or neutral in the situation.
Okay, well, just I want to turn on to that one, is that what you're saying is that for most, the greatest growth we've had is and people are ambivalent about what happens in council.
That's through the media, yeah.
Okay. So I'm just wondering
that conclusion. Yes.
That may be. Yeah, so very important. So I'm just wondering, are we going to be looking at in this policy? We're looking at the days of a single broadsheet newspaper, or most people got their news and information from perhaps one or two trusted sources that they could rely upon.
Councillor, what I'm going to just suggest is that the paper today, what we're dealing with today, is a procedural matter around the delegation. We're not into discussing the detail thereof, so the paper is focused on do we need one? So do we think this is important, and where the delegation's going to sit? So that's the focus of the paper, and that's going to be the focus.
I take your point there, Madam Mayor, but I'm just wondering is that if we there's probably an opportunity to have a refresh of the policy, and I'm interested to know what our relationship is with perhaps other policies. I think about the significance of engagement policy, the relationship with, say, the elected members' code of conduct. There's reference to those sorts of things. So there are some, there are some strands that go across it. So
and absolutely, Councillor McGurk, and that's I think there's a workshop timetabled for this one coming up. Paul, can you give me a date on that?
That workshop is on the 11th of December.
Okay, so that's a good opportunity.
First I heard of the workshop.
Okay, I've seen that.
Okay, then I'll leave the questions until then.
Nathaniel.
Can I move? Oh, sorry, can I move this?
Oh, if yes, if you'd like to, thank you. Moved. Do we have a seconder? Deputy. Thank you, Councillor Fulton. Just to keep it moving along, thank you. So I'm conscious works and infrastructure.com. Nathaniel, you're next.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your report. I was wondering, following on from what Councillor McGurk had said, how do you see the council involvement in regards to this delegation as improving it? Do you believe that it will help increase the amount of satisfaction in council's policy and the communications engagement?
Through the chair, governance input is essential for something like this, because it helps guide the manner in which we communicate. It helps guide the manner in which we engage, whether we do high-level engagement or really detailed engagement. It's the councillors are people who are inherently connected with the community. They're well versed. They do talk to a lot of people, and so they actually will provide really good feedback and help us to inform us and how we should be communicating with the public. So basically we're utilising their skills and their expertise to then help guide this strategy.
Thank you. Councillor Laurie, then the Deputy Mayor, then Councillor
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and through you, you just said something, Paul, there that I just really went off in my head. You talked about elected representatives' expertise helping this process. Now, my observation is that actually it gets at times difficult for our communications team to do their jobs because of politicians trying to do their jobs for them or influence the way they do their jobs. And so I'm wondering, does actually increasing the politicians' involvement in council communications, isn't that likely to make it harder?
Through you, the Mayor, I think we might have to see how that goes.
Because through the chair, I think it will make it harder, and I'll tell you why, and I have some professional experience in this area. When I see media releases go out from the council that elected representatives have been involved in drafting and shaping, they typically are very poor media releases, which then get ignored quite rightfully by the media. Now, if what we're suggesting means more of that, then I can't support it. I think a lot of people suspect that actually our communications might work better if your team were just allowed to get on with their jobs. Any thoughts on that?
Through you, the Mayor, basically the purpose of this report is actually to seek to have the guidance, or to obviously the delegations that have the guidance from the governance. The governance is not to get the day-to-day input and the operational running of the communications team. So we're not going on each media release to the relevant person saying, look, can you please proof my media release and get input that way. So we'll get guidance, and that's the whole purpose of this, is to guide, but not to do the operations day-to-day.
Sounds like a little bit of a dance on the top of the head of a pin, but one last comment, Madam Mayor, if it's okay. It says in option 3, which is my preference. I agree that communication is very important and we need to do a good job of it. We need to front foot things and everything else. But I personally would prefer it if we left this delegation with the officers who have the skills and the expertise to do the job. I don't think that it's a good idea for councillors to tell our roading team necessarily how to build roads, or our drainage team how to do their job. And I think that we should respect the professionalism of your crew. So when I look at option 3, which is my preference, leave the delegation with officers, it says advantages none. Well, I can think of a bunch of advantages. One, you remove the perception that councillors or elected representatives might be influencing the communication staff. And 2, you save time and money, don't you? Because we wouldn't be doing this exercise, we'd just be letting you get on with your jobs. Aren't those advantages? Through the chair.
So perhaps I'll have a crack at answering that one. So yes, if this is something as technical as building a road, then absolutely the council has given us the delegated authority to go and do that work. And if we make a mistake, then you hold us accountable. But in the area of communications, it's one of those areas where, in my view, that the line between governance and management is a lot more blurred. For example, if we're trying to be proactive about something, we're almost invariably quoting a chair or the mayor, and they quite rightly have input into the words that we are putting in their mouths effectively, and so that has to be words that that person is comfortable with. So I don't see the strategy as inviting the council into every press release that goes out of the organisation. If I'm the one that's being quoted, then I will have a look at it and then I'm fine for it to go out. But this is about setting a direction and setting some expectations, and staying at that high level. But inevitably, we will still have several times a week when we will be talking to a chair or a councillor about, are you okay if we use your name and these words? So,
to Chair, which is what we do now. Which seems to work fine with everyone. We're talking about adding another layer of political influence on our communications. That concerns me. And my last question, though, through the Chair to the Chief Executive is, my point before stands, which is when it comes to that option of the delegation staying with the staff, it says option 3, advantages none. And I'm saying there are advantages, and the advantages include you guys not having to spend time and money and us having to spend time and money doing the strategy. I think that should be included in the advantages.
I don't think councillors are going to get paid any more for being involved in doing their job, Councillor Laurie. And I think you've heard from Mr Shattuck, you've got an opinion that you're expressing today, and you come from a background in journalism. I would say to you that you're focusing very much on media releases, but my understanding from Mr Shattuck is that what we're talking about here in terms of the strategy is far broader than that. And, you know, from an elected member perspective, one of your most important roles is to communicate the direction and the thinking and the vision for your community. That's what you're here to do. And so this is the high level. What does that look like? What are the components? I absolutely endorse Councillor Courtney's comments. It's an absolute high priority. And I can tell you, as a National Council member of Local Government New Zealand, this is identified as a critical issue for governance, for governors to understand, especially in a world that is changing so fast in terms of communications and engagement. The acting Chief Executive, Mr Hammond, we identified the gap in terms of having someone to support engagement on infrastructure projects, and we included in the LTP the funding for that. That's come through, and you will, I think I can reflect on some of the projects where we said actually that's a piece that's missing, and often we're spending time engaging with the community. And elected members are really important in doing that, but we need a strategic context for that, and that is what I'm being very keen to have come forward. And I know that Paul's been trying to get this through to us for quite some time, but his team has had quite a few changes, and it's been a very busy space in terms of changes. He's finally in a little bit of a settled period now, and he's been able to bring this forward, so I'm looking forward to it coming through. Councillor Deputy Mayor's next, and then Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm happy to support the recommendation. There's just 2 points here. I think 4.3 showing a decline in satisfaction over a period of time is of some concern. However, I would be bold enough to suggest that the political arm of a council, wherever it may be, from Northland down to Bluff, does have a very profound effect on the residents' satisfaction or otherwise. So to a certain extent, people in this room can be the governors of the outcome in whatever form. Secondly, the new role, is this full-time?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, it is a full-time FTE.
I applaud that, because there are projects that need to be information-based, so that we don't get a van load of questions of why are you digging up that road. Thank you.
Councillor Barker and then Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I support option 1 very strongly. I believe that as elected members, we are elected by the community, and the community does expect to hear what its governors, who have been elected, have to say on a matter. What are you interrupting for, Councillor?
Sorry, Councillor. Madam Mayor, are we in debate? I'm just clarifying where we are in the meeting.
Moved and seconded. It has been moved and seconded.
So we finished with questions, is really the question.
I've got a question too.
Finished with you having your microphone on, Councillor. Councillor Barker. Thank you.
I'm entitled to find out where we are in the meeting, am I not?
Can I continue?
Yes, but if you could just signal to me that you want to speak, and then we can sort that out.
You weren't looking, I'm sorry.
We've had quite a bit of cross table today at this end of the table, so Councillor Barker is speaking to the motion.
Thank you. I'm speaking to the motion, and I'm supporting option 1, and the reason being that I believe that, as I've indicated, we have a role as elected members, and our community expects to hear from us as the leaders of this organisation, as the governors of this organisation. So it really concerns me to think that anyone would think that the news media will ignore something that an elected member has reported as a release. It really does concern me. If our media is sunk to that level, then we have some real problems. And my question is relative to section 5.2 and the new officer being appointed. I know that we've got very good officers who have direct community involvement with our community, and this is going to be just slightly different to that, isn't it? This is just purely on the communication side, but it will cover the whole organisation, I hope. Yeah.
Through Madam Mayor, yes, it is. It's across the organisation. It has particular focus on infrastructure, and especially the capital projects team, to make sure that they've got the stakeholders correct and they're engaging appropriately with those stakeholders, but it is a cross-organisation role.
And finally, as the appointment won't be until next year, any idea, we'll probably learn more when we go to the workshop, but any idea of when we might actually be able to bring this into operation?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we actually have a KPI set that the strategy would be complete in March. So by March 2019, the strategy should be complete following the workshop and should be to the Governance Committee and then.
Thank you. Long before the next election.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm still trying to get my head around the pros and the cons of what we're doing and exactly what we're doing. That new role on 5.2, that position will still go ahead regardless of the option we decide today?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, that's correct.
And B, through the Chair, this policy is to help us, as quoted here in 2.1, is to provide guidance for staff on how to best engage with the community. But it's more than that. Is that right? I mean, things have changed rapidly over the last number of years. Facebook's become more prevalent, etc. Information is expected to be more instant, etc. But you're asking for guidance from a governance more than just giving you an idea how to speak to the community. And it's not, that's right, it's not for us as governance to decide what goes into the media or communication. I'm missing something.
Through you, Mayor, the strategy is to essentially it's getting that high level governance input, essentially setting the direction. My team, I have a team of experts. They know the best methods and mediums to communicate to the public and make sure that those mediums are used in an appropriate manner, that it is targeted. So essentially we are just, from the strategy, is seeking guidance from the governance to provide direction.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I still quite don't understand what guidance we can give. You're an expert on, and we give feedback. Hey, have you picked up on this new form of media? It's become the craze now, and you're always pretty well up on that. And you also give it back to us as chairs. Say, hey, is that if our name's going to be presented or as part of the topics crossed? Tim, is that what we've discussed? Is that what you're trying to get across from your committee? And so we get all that at the moment. So I'm still not quite sure. Sorry, I'm not quite sure what more governance without us telling you what to put. Maybe so you can help you on that.
So there's always more you can do in that communication space. I mean, we're active in a huge range of areas, and look, I have conversations with councillors from time to time saying, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? And so one of the things that the strategy will do is set priorities. These are the areas that the team will focus on. Okay. Particularly in the area of social media. Now, you could throw a huge resource into there, and is that what we want to do, or are we still focusing more on mainstream media? Is this about raising awareness of the council's activities? There's that discussion. Where are we putting the 80% of our effort? Where are we going to get the best bangs for our bucks? And we need to have that discussion with you as a group, so that we get a clear direction, so that when one councillor comes to me and says, I think you should have responded to this thing on someone's Facebook page, we can explain, well, look, that's not part of our strategy, so that we get that clear direction from the entire organisation.
Okay, I'm still got my concerns here. You're explaining it well. I still think we can come to you, Madam Mayor and CEO and Paul, if we think you've missed something here or that's not quite, or something's come up. Have you reacted to that? I can't. I'm concerned now that, maybe I've got this wrong, I'm concerned now that if we start having a governance councillor input in either the strategy or the input, the media release, or what's reacted to quickly and how, or what topic to emphasise on, that will be seen as spin doctoring as councillors and that we've then got influence. And that's not our intent. And we already very well communicate on our own as representatives of the community, and we also represent the council when it's appropriate. I'm concerned that this could be used, or could be interpreted to be used as a way for us putting another filter before it gets to community, or what we should be reacting to.
Oh, well, councillors, I think you might be looking for something that's not here.
Okay, well,
what I would say to you, perhaps as all of you, to just for context, is can you tell me, please, which strategies you have under your committees where you haven't had some governance input into setting priorities? Can you please tell me which budgets at this council you don't have any priority setting over and which you don't have any performance reporting over? And do you think it is appropriate for there to be budgets where you have no governance reporting in terms of performance? I don't. And at the moment, there is no governance reporting on the communications budgets, and I don't think that's acceptable. And that's one of the reasons this is here. You have an obligation in terms of performance and setting priorities and setting strategies. That is clearly your governance role, and that is the intent. We are not talking about operational day-to-day matters in relation to, just as we don't have day-to-day involvement in determining capital projects, but we do have governance oversight in terms of setting priorities and performance measurement. And this is a part of council that has operated without that. And I think it's a subject of conversation at all sorts of levels. You know that it sits as a risk factor in audit, risk and finance. And we look at that and go, well, where's the governance reporting? We need to have some. That's good governance in my view. And what I'd say is that the Local Government Excellence Review clearly identified that and said, wait, you need to sort it out.
Part of a reply from a chief executive is there that we get some response from us as councillors, governance, what topics needs to be replied to or reacted to, and
So sorry, this is in terms of setting a strategy. You know, where are the areas that on a big picture level you want the team to focus on? Which media, how much resources, that type of thing. That still isn't going to stop the occasional conversation that something's cropping up and the team need to look at it. That's absolutely fine. But it is about that high level direction and then that high level overview. Are we doing what the council expected for the money it provided?
My last question, thank you through Chair, Madam Mayor, is are we not putting enough funding or resource into communications? Is that?
Well, Councillor, you won't be able to make an informed decision about that unless you get some governance reporting and do some performance measurement, which is what you need to do to then determine your budgets.
My concern with feedback is sometimes we wrongly and rightly get criticised that we're putting too much energies in putting across a particular explanation. In some areas, we with the public wanting to know about something, doesn't matter how much we put meetings or hearings or publications out, some are still not going to know what's happening, and that's just how it works. But other areas, I think, we're putting out this particular brochure seems to be trying to sugarcoat something or understate something, so we get criticised both ways. So if you think we aren't putting, and Mr. Shattuck might be able to answer that well, if we think we're not putting enough resource, manpower, governance, and getting the right messages and allowing the public to get feedback to us, then I'm supportive.
Councillor Fulton.
The question hasn't really been...
Oh, sorry.
The question was, and Mr. Shattuck, is have we not got a good enough strategy? Have we not got a well enough resourced staff or finance to get the messages out we need and to get the feedback from the community?
Through you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is that we would like guidance from the governance So yes, that's first and foremost. And in terms of resourcing, we outline in this that we do see a gap in the resourcing and the engagement space. And that's what has been requested through the long-term plan. So, and once we have that, then with the strategy, we'll be able to go from there.
Thank you.
Councillor Fulton.
Thank you. Look, I'm just going to debate briefly. I think that this is fantastic that this has come up today, and I want to acknowledge that certainly in my time on council, the ability for councillors to engage, first of all with staff and then with the communications team, has grown immensely, and that does allow for greater transparency. And maybe this is one of the steps towards that, and I certainly in the past have raised concerns about the lack of communications over, for example, workshops. I have seen Councillor Laurie himself do media releases over disability workshops and things, and wondered why has our comms team not done that on behalf of all of us. So I, for one, welcome this this high level conversation over how we can improve our transparency over workshops, how we might look at the smart little city messaging, that kind of thing. So for me, this is about this higher level conversation where we might set some goals in terms of what we would like to see happen as a result of the hard work we're doing around the around this table. And I see that there are lots of gaps. We're doing some fantastic things. Our decision making is generally well communicated to the public, but there are areas where we could improve in terms of our communications. And I'm not an expert in this field, and so I rely on the communications team to provide that guidance, but I certainly think we could have greater conversations, and I'm really enjoying the Chief Executive's ease with us in terms of allowing staff to have conversations with us and allowing us to try and promulgate issues which have sat around here for many, many years. So I think communication is key to that, and certainly when you look at the stats of residents who are satisfied or very satisfied with feeling like they've been engaged with us, it's gone down over the years, and I'd like to turn that around.
Councillor Fulton. Now, we're speaking into any further questions for Paul. When you're done, that's fine. I'm just checking if there's, I've heard you, Councillor Laurie, but I don't know. Take a breath and smile today, come on. And Paul, any more questions for Paul? Because he's going to leave the table now. So we did a little bit of interaction before. No further questions, right. So thank you, Paul, very much. Now, Councillor Laurie speaking against in the debate.
I am, thank you.
Just noting Councillor Noonan's reserved her right of reply.
Sure. So my preference, as I said before, is option 3, that we leave the delegation with the officers. I'm speaking against this because Nelson City Council already suffers from a perception that too much gets spun for political purposes. And this will actually only worsen that perception. I think the communication staff should be able to just get on with their jobs. I think Councillor Barker's comment was very helpful. A short time ago, he said that if the news media wasn't reporting statements made by councillors, then something was wrong. Well, what is wrong with that statement, actually, with respect, is that the news media reports news. The media does not report statements from councillors because they want them to be reported. The idea that someone, or the people who have that level of understanding of how the media works, can offer guidance and expertise to how we deal with the media, in my opinion, is absurd. Picking up on Councillor Fulton's statement, accusing me apparently of making a statement about something to do with a disabled rights group, I think you're confusing, with respect, a media statement with a Facebook post. I would encourage all councillors to do Facebook posts and social media about what they're doing. So I think it's very
Councillor Laurie definitely had a media release in the paper. It was in the Nelson Mail that I saw the article.
Well, again, this shows, through the chair, a lack of understanding.
Hang on, Councillor Fulton, I need to deal with the
point of order. He's misrepresentation of my views. And
what are you accusing me of?
Councillor Laurie, look, please just take a breath and relax. Councillor Fulton, I'll deal with the point of order.
Well, I think that the issue I'd raised is that I have felt that often our workshops are not covered by the media, and that we should perhaps be looking at that more. And Councillor Laurie, the point of order is Councillor Laurie
did do a media release.
Did do a media release.
Right, Councillor Laurie.
So, through the chair, this is actually
so you need to be quiet, because I am chairing, so be quiet for a moment. You've got lots of yap today, you just need to be quiet for a minute, and so does Councillor Fulton. So your point of order is about representation. The statement from Councillor Laurie, not yet. So the statement, I'm hearing is that we've got a point of order that your comment to the meeting that you made a Facebook post is a misrepresentation of what you actually did. So could you tell us whether you actually did a media release as well as a Facebook post?
No, and do you know what's great about this? Again, it highlights the point that Councillor Barker was highlighting, which is a lack of understanding about how the media works.
So that's fine. So you're saying you did not do a media release.
I did not do a media release.
I do not uphold the point of order. Continue, Councillor.
But I might have been quoted in the media, and there's a huge difference. And people around this table should be able to understand that.
Now, anyone else wish to speak in the debate? I've done a bit of speaking, but I'm actually going to speak in the debate now, and then we'll go to the right of reply from Councillor Noonan. It's interesting that the world of communication and engagement is actually, I think, become more interesting. And it's become more interesting because media is one part of it, but in some areas we're becoming a smaller and smaller part of how we create conversations with our community. We are a public organisation. You are the representatives of the public sitting here. You must be engaging and understanding the engagement principles of this council. It's critically important, and you must be here. You're elected for that purpose. You are advocates, for the region of Nelson. My role is defined as the first person of the region. That's my role, to represent us in Parliament, around New Zealand. That's what I do on behalf of the citizens of Nelson. And so we need to think about, we're not here developing engagement and communication for our own personal means. You're quite capable of doing that yourselves. You can do that if you want to do that for political purposes, but this is a public organisation and you have governance roles, and you need to exercise your governance roles. And what we've identified is that you have a significant budget sitting in council of which you have no governance oversight, and you are not getting reporting on performance measures, apart from when some of them come through the resident survey. So if you want to change those numbers, if you want to change some of the public perception indices that come through the Local Government New Zealand surveys, and Councillor Courtney's talked about those before, they're not good. They are not good. Then you need to decide what you're going to do in terms of a strategy. And I think you have got a responsibility to engage in that discussion. That's what you're here to do. Many of you have exceptional networks in the community. And so I think the staff get value from hearing from you about your thoughts on different engagement techniques. It's part of this. This is not about media releases. That's one of the most, transactional processes that goes on. If an organisation is relying on its way of communicating with its public through media releases, it's back in the 1970s, and you all know that. So I think it's a good thing that Mr Shaddix brought this forward. I'm thanking Ms McDonald for the work that she's done to bring it forward as well. And let's get on with it, because we had a message through the LGNZ Excellence Review that this needed some attention. And I would greatly appreciate it. I enjoy doing the stuff that I do in terms of engagement as Mayor, and I thank them for their recognition that it is something that I do. But I want all of you to have a contribution in setting the strategic direction for this council, because that leads to better outcomes. That's why we are a collective democracy that needs to work together, and we need to work on being an engaging team. And I applaud Councillor Fulton's comments and her observation before that we are increasingly seeing that, because the teamwork is happening between the Chief Executive and his staff and the members of the governance team, and that is a sign of a healthy organisation. Councillor Noonan is doing the right to reply now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're a bit late.
It's been interesting listening to the debate, and I read this paper and I thought, well, I heard from some members that the strategy is going to cover dealing with the media, but that that might be a small part of what this strategy is going to achieve, but when I talk to people out in the community, they don't understand what we do. And I think that is the reason for this strategy. It's to make what we do a lot simpler. Now, years ago, the insurance industry looked at their policies and decided that how they were reading was complicated legal language. They simplified it. I think we need to take a leaf from their book and make what we do understandable. Our business is very complex. Now, when you stand for council, you don't know that. But you find out very quickly when you get in the door that you've got a whole lot of legislation, rules and everything else that makes business at the council table quite a challenge. Now, the people outside our doors don't understand that until they talk to us, and we say, well, actually, we would really like to do that, but we've got a whole lot of things that we have to follow. We can't just do what we want. We want to hear from our community about what they want. It's not about us. It's not about me. It's about what the community believes they need done. Now, if we get a strategy where we can make what we do easier to understand, then I'm all for that. Because I would like the community to understand what we do and actually the challenges that we have. So bring that on. Bring on the strategy. Let's get on with it and see what the people want and have a more meaningful conversation than all the legalised jargon that we have to deal with. Let's make them understand in a simple way what we do and how we can help them.
Right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Ask for a division.
Okay. Thank you.
So Councillor Ackland is absent. Councillor Barker.
Aye.
Councillor Courtney.
Aye.
Councillor Delberg is absent. Councillor Fulton.
Aye.
Councillor Laurie.
No.
Councillor McGurk.
Aye.
Councillor Matheson.
Absolutely.
Councillor Noonan.
Aye.
Councillor Rutledge is absent. Councillor Skinner.
No.
Councillor Walker.
Aye.
The Mayor.
Aye. The motion is carried, 8 votes for and 2 against. Thank you. Thanks, Robin. Right, let's just keep on. We'll keep on going. We've got one more item, have we? Let's see. And public, and then we'll whip through public excluded. And I'd really like to be all done by 12:30 if we could. Thank you. Moved on page 41. This is item 10. Moved by Councillor Barker. Do I have a seconder for that item? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any questions or debate on that one? In that case, I will put it. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. That concludes, I think, the items in public today. So we'll go into public excluded, remembering we've got that additional item. So moving the items there. Oh, did I miss one? We just did that. We've just done that. So that's been done, and you seconded it. Yes, you did. And you seconded it, and I've asked for questions, debate, and it's done. So, moving on to public excluded business. Thanks, Nathaniel. Nice to see you. Moving on to public excluded, we've got items, the items on your agenda sheets, so just all of those. Any questions on any of those items before we go in terms of, and any, they all make sense to you? And then we've got the extra one, which is request for leave of absence. So with that suite, I will move, we go into public excluded, seconded by Councillor McGurk. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. All right, so we'll go into public